Right, so Dr. Tracy Stanley, last year we spoke about creativity in general, and this year I just wanted to talk about creativity in the business environment in particular. So bearing in mind that we're talking about business in very broad terms, but in your experience, what does creativity and innovation mean to you in your business experience?
Well, it's about responding to the changes in the business environment. We have, as everyone knows, we have a very fast-paced change, and the businesses need to be able to change rapidly as well. So creativity and innovation from a business perspective is about being able to respond to those changes faster than your competitors.
So it's about being alert and being responsive, isn't it?
Absolutely. Tracking your external environment. Yeah.
Yes.
Anticipating what, and sometimes things come up. So sometimes it's your competitors, sometimes it's problems. Sometimes it can be new technologies that represent opportunities, such as artificial intelligence and chatbots and the like. So it's about assessing how that might impact your business and the whole of the business.
A lot of people talk about the importance of trust and freedom. In your experience, how do you create environments for creativity to thrive?
The trust and freedom, it's interesting. As you know, Jasmine, my PhD research looked at how work environments contribute to creative behaviours and employee engagement. And for a job and environment to be highly engaging, people want autonomy. They love the freedom to decide how they're going to achieve their objectives. It's really important, and my finding wasn't new. It's been around for a while. And then if you look at trust, which is also an important finding, trust contributes to an environment where people feel psychologically safe, as Amy Edmondson has highlighted. And if you don't feel safe, you're not going to experiment, and you're really not going to do things any differently, which is what's required for creativity and innovation to take hold in an organization.
Right. So micromanagement, for example, that would not be a good condition, good working environment for creativity.
You're absolutely right. And I smile because in my PhD research, I asked people, tell me about a day when you were highly engaged and what was happening. And I also said, tell me about a really crappy day when you were disengaged and what was happening. And so frequently people said, when I was being micromanaged, really this whole thing about autonomy and being able to do things and manage things, the opposite of it has exactly the same effect. And people just said, what's the point in doing anything? And they quit, or they quit and leave or quit and stay.
And I suppose that there are stages in a person's work environment. In the initial stages, perhaps they do need to be micromanaged when they're learning how to do the job. So if they're just kind of like, let loose when they start work, they might be making mistakes that are unnecessary because they're not learning from what's been tried and tested. But later on, they might need to have a bit more freedom to be autonomous.
You're absolutely right. Younger people, new into the job, they actually expect it. They want to have their hand held. They don't want to be dropped in and not know what they're doing so that they fail. But I guess the really good managers give them the information and the support that they need, and watch them and have conversations with them, and then let them go and do their own thing as soon as they can, and they've got a great chance of success.
Right. And you alluded to disruptive technologies earlier when you were talking about, we have to face change. And in your experience, what has been the impact of disruptive technologies?
I guess I could talk about from a customer point of view, and this is perhaps something that the listeners have experienced. You used to have to be able to call a customer and talk to a customer call center, talk to a real person. But this is an expensive way of supporting any product or service. And increasingly, organizations are moving them and using artificial intelligence and chatbots. So you get a phone, you get a voice saying, "Oh, hello there, please enter your customer number. And then, is your inquiry number 1, number 2, number 3? I'm sorry, was that a yes or a no?" And you have to, you fight your way through it. And I can see it's efficient, but from a customer perspective, the artificial intelligence, it's not there yet.
Yeah, and there's always this tension between efficiency and creativity. And, and sometimes Amazon works very much on the highest forms of efficiency possible, and it's to the extent that we're going to get our packages delivered through drones. You know, so,
No.
yeah. I think I don't know if they've started to trial that, but that's what's on the agenda now. It's like, you know, save money on, you know, people driving at fast speeds to deliver it on time. Just get drones to deliver simple packages. So that takes away, you know, like we're using artificial intelligence there, but it takes away that personal interaction, doesn't it? And maybe
Yeah.
it's even important if, you know, in some cases it isn't important. We just want the cheapest USB, you know, or hard drive or whatever. We just want the cheapest. We don't really care if the person who's going to deliver that to us is going to say hello to us, for example.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, our expectations of service delivery, it's a good observation. And when something's really new, like drone delivery of packages, there's so many things that the organization has to consider, like what happens if a bird comes and knocks it out into the sea and the package goes, and there's so much to consider. And I was actually thinking about your first comment there, Jasvir, about this tension between creativity and efficiency. So when the organization has business as usual, we're trying to be as effective and as efficient as we can running the organization as a system. And then new ideas, new technologies. One of my colleagues said they're a bit like a virus into the system. So they're trying to be introduced when everyone's trying to get the system working the way it was previously, and how you need to recognize the disruptive element and see it in some way as a virus. Well, we need to be able to incorporate this and change this. And think about it from a systemic point of view, because the change isn't just in one area, it would go right through to all the areas. So it's not just in servicing, but it's in accounts, it's in HR, for an example.
Mm-hmm. Right. And some people would say, well, maybe like even in, like you've talked about HR, you've talked about accounts. In accounting, perhaps they don't have the scope to be as creative as they do in HR, because HR is about interacting with people. It's associated with the soft skills, whereas accounting is the hard, you know, it uses the hard expertise and the knowledge, and things have to be accurate. Things have to be done efficiently. So again, like we're talking about the diversity, that, you know, we can't always be creative to the same extent in all aspects of the work environment.
Maybe not. I could be devil's advocate on that. In fact, I went to a presentation last night that talked about how technologies will make accounting so it can all entirely be done by robots. You know, robots, I mean systems. So you can sort of be completely automated and go all the way through to your accountant, all the way through to your tax office, which of course has implications for people's job from a HR point of view. So no, I actually hold the view that any role can give them permission, trust them, give them autonomy. Maybe the innovation will be more granular than disruptive. But I mean, that adds value to the organization if it allows it to achieve efficiency and effectiveness.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And creativity can be difficult to manage for people. You know, earlier we talked about some people being micromanaged, and, you know, it might be easier to tell people how to do things rather than allowing them to experiment.
Yeah.
In terms of management, how do we absorb the risks involved in creativity?
That's a good question. So any new idea in an organization goes through a process. It goes through a funnel, and just say the organization has 100 ideas. By the time everyone has analyzed it and tested it, you know, maybe 5 make it through to the next stage, and so forth. You need to have a process that provides the beginning opportunity to experiment and fail. But obviously, the closer you get to sort of, well, this actually looks like this might be a goer, I think we might be able to implement this through a pilot, then you need to sort of tighten the controls and get your business case out and all your normal processes you use in an organization. So it gets, you want to mitigate the risk the closer you get to this becoming a real thing. And so I guess the real judgment is, when do we start pulling in and having some controls, but recognizing if we go too early, we'll kill ideas and they're lost opportunities.
Yeah, so we have to be sensitive to the stages, don't we?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And how do we establish the value of ideas? You know, because a lot of people talk about how ideas will be generated, but as you and I both, I'm sure we'll both agree that not every idea is a good idea. So how do we discern, and how do we know which ideas we should be investing in and nurturing, and which ideas we should just kind of like set aside?
Everyone, that's such a great question again as well. What ideas? And well, a lot of ideas, it's about timing. I heard this yesterday, and in fact, I think it was Jim Gross who said that that's what the major thing that contributes to a new idea's success. And for example, I remember seeing Leonardo da Vinci was drawing helicopters centuries ago, and of course they were great ideas, but the timing wasn't right.
Mm-hmm.
Same as when the internet came out. I remember colleagues saying, well, what's the point of having a web page? It's like putting a sign in the desert, no one will see it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you had a fully automated web customer service delivery and people didn't have the infrastructure, the network, then it wouldn't have worked. So timing is one thing.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is, I think you need to say there's going to be some ideas that don't make it through that probably could have been really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
But it's about testing it with the customer, experimenting, getting feedback, getting as much feedback and not falling. And most innovation should be focused on, either a problem or an opportunity. So if it's a problem, really make sure you understand the problem before you jump to the solution. And of course, that's often a problem because we get so excited by some solution that we've made up that we're sort of looking to confirm our solution rather than looking to test the problem, see if we've got a solution and see if the customer will pay for it. Because that's really big as well.
We communicate the idea as well, isn't it? Like you're absolutely right that the timing is important, but also the way we articulate that idea. For example, if the idea has been suggested by somebody in a hierarchical position that is superior to us, we might accept it more readily than if the idea has been put forward by somebody who's a subordinate. There's power dynamics, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm sure that happens all the time. And people in more senior positions need to be aware of it because that's the fastest way to kill other people suggesting ideas. So, keep the data, collect data that isn't related to a person, get it from the customer, and then at least you're in a better position. And you made another point there, Jasvira. Pitching is a skill we all need to develop, whether we're in innovation or not. A capacity to have an idea, to articulate it as an elevator pitch and to describe its potential value. Yeah. And I think what we need to do is, while we like to pitch, we need to be honest about what our assumptions are. Sometimes we, there's facts and there's assumptions, and sometimes we mix the two together, and they're really very, very different. And when you're making decisions, you need to be clear, well, this is some facts based upon an experiment with 100 people, and here's some assumptions about the extent to which I think what we learned in that 100 people will scale out to all these other markets.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I find that a lot of highly creative people who've got lots of ideas, they don't necessarily have a high level of communication skills in the sense that they don't know how to tailor their message so that in a way that it's understood. Have you noticed that, Tracy?
There's certainly, absolutely, there's a skill in pitching, and you need to understand the group of stakeholders you're pitching to. So normally when we've got an innovation process with stages, there's different stakeholders at different points who have different interests and concerns. So the skill is not just in communicating clearly what your idea is, it's in responding to what are their concerns and what the impact is for them.
Yes. Yes. I remember seeing a cartoon where somebody designed a wheel and in the cartoon it was like he was offering this wheel to like a prehistoric family, and they said no, that's not what we need.
Yeah, sure. That's a very good metaphor, and of course with hindsight we can all see how you could be blinded by that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when we started the conversation, you talked about how it's important to be responsive, to be alert, and that ties in with this concept of continuous improvement. The Japanese call it Kaizen. Kaizen, like continuously learning, continuously improving. And I suppose that as individuals and as organizations, if we stop learning, we stagnate. So, how do you, as an individual and in the organizations that you work for, how do you foster this culture of Kaizen, continuous improvement?
How do you foster it? Yeah. It's an interesting one. How do you foster it? I guess culturally, I mean, the best thing is to have leaders who are curious, leaders who keep looking for new information, leaders who are clear about, wow, there's this blockchain thing coming, I'm not sure how it impacts upon us. And so staying there, showing that they're interested, but that they don't have all the information. So the behavior of managers is the most important thing. People who are naturally curious will look for things, but if there's not an environment where they feel comfortable in expressing an idea, then they'll remain silent and will lose the gift of their insights.
Yes, so curiosity and this kind of culture of asking questions and encouraging questions, and
Yes,
the question that triggers the creativity, isn't it? You know,
yeah, absolutely.
and very often we focus on solving problems, we focus on solutions, we focus on responses, and we don't focus as much on, well, what are the questions that we haven't been asking yet?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, those questions are really, really key. And questions like, what information don't I have? So I've got some facts and I've got some assumptions, and very rarely do we make decisions with all the information. So asking questions to identify what it is I don't know is really important.
Yes. Is there anything else that you'd like to add about creativity and innovation in the business environment?
But it doesn't, you know, it was interesting, we started talking about, there is a change management process. So change management, it's interesting, since I've been away and come back to Australia, it has really flourished as a profession. And like any other change program that involves changes to attitudes and behaviors and processes and systems, it's useful to have a conscious focus on how that change will be managed. And with innovation, it's about having the right touch, as we said, not being too heavy at the beginning, you know, creating a culture where people, you know, are curious and explore new ideas and see problems and test and experiment, and then have a way of gently massaging the idea through and recognizing we might lose some ideas. I mean, not organizations can't fund every idea. I've heard that some organizations have good systems. So if you've got a good system, you've had an idea and you decided not to pursue it, at least keep it there as a record, as some implicit knowledge somewhere, so that in the future, perhaps the timing might change, the organization can come back and all the discussion that went on, the tacit knowledge hasn't been lost.
Yes. And also it's to do with acknowledging the person who had the idea, because sometimes, what, you know, I think we examples of where somebody suggested an idea and it wasn't the right time for it, and then later on somebody else, like maybe a year, you know, thinking about Tesla and thinking about, you know, the timing wasn't right for Tesla at that time, and but later on other people get you know, they get associated with having that idea first, and so if it's recorded, if the idea isn't used, if it is at least they won't be undersold.
Yeah, you're right, Jezebel, but you know, there's politics in organizations, and yeah, and sometimes we don't, and sometimes people say an idea and they may not be highly credible, and you think about the idea. I know myself, I say no to a lot of ideas, but it's just to give myself time and permission to think about it a bit more. So whose idea it is, you know, it could have been one person's idea, but more often than not, it's the result of a couple of conversations, and then some new information comes along.
Yeah, and I suppose we have to acknowledge that creativity doesn't occur in a vacuum. We have to be humble and know that, you know, every idea arises based on a context where there were hundreds, thousands, millions of other ideas that were in place before that idea that we had. Yeah, so okay, so it's been a great pleasure speaking with you, Dr. Stanley, and I look forward to more discussions like this with you.
Thank you, Jezebel. Lovely to chat to you too. Good luck with this wonderful knowledge sharing initiative.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Bye for now.
Bye.